Hey everyone, my name is Cody Bernard. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Klue, and I'm here today to talk to you about the value edge, how to find your value edge, and how to make sure that you're equipping your sellers with what they need to work and win their competitive deals. So with that, let's get into it. Now, everybody's probably seen this graphic, the value edge graphic, the three concentric circles talking about what your buyer cares about, what you do, what your competitors do. And I want to spend a little bit of time on these shaded areas in the middle here, which is starting on the right side, what your buyer cares about and what your competition does that is unique to them. This middle piece here around what your buyer cares about and what you do and what your competitors do, although there may be some like minor differences, problems that you both can solve for with, features or functionality or capabilities or service offerings. And then the third piece here on the left, which is what we're here to talk about today, this is your value edge. This is what or when your buyer and what they care about meets what you do and what makes you unique and different. Now, before kind of going a little bit further, the approach I like to think about or take when it comes to identifying this differentiation, I look to the force management model, which is kind of this three levels of differentiation: holistic differentiation, comparative differentiation, and unique differentiation. Your value edge might span all three and cover a few different components in each. So for holistic, for example, your brand might be a differentiation for you. It's not tangible, but it's something that is very impactful and a reason why you win and why you're different than the competition. It could be comparative. You might be solving a particular pain or use case that your buyer is looking to get solved for different or better than your competition, although they can still potentially do something similar. And then lastly, unique, right? Like this is the area where you really shine. This is what you do that your buyer is hopefully going to care a lot about, aligning your differentiation with what their pains are and what they're looking to solve for. And this is where you really want to anchor your value edge, because the best value edges out there are aligned directly to a buyer pain. The old saying, adage, however you want to phrase it, nobody really buys benefits or buys, vitamins. They buy Advil, they buy Tylenol, right? Like if somebody has a headache, they want to get it. They want it to be gone immediately. At least I know I do. And that's the same way for your value edge. You want to anchor everything in a pain, because if you don't anchor your conversations that you're having with your buyers in their pain, it's really easy to lose the plot, and it becomes an uphill battle for you to try to prove that what you have to offer is going to be the right solution for them, if any solution at all, right? So sales is a game of, convincing people that they have or you have a solution to their problem, and not in, a way that you're looking to deceive them, but truthfully, you want to be a trusted advisor, and whatever pain they're looking to solve for, you want to make sure that you're communicating that you can solve for it in a unique way. And this is where your value edge can really come in handy. Now, when thinking about this process for how I, have gone through this, the process of building a value edge, I think of it in kind of four core areas. It's kind of similar to like a positioning exercise. So, I know April Dunford, for example, awesome voice in our space, starts with, who would be an alternative, or what would people use if you didn't exist, starting with alternatives in the market or alternatives, like within an existing business. I like to start with rooting everything in the core pain that a buyer, our ICP, our target personas are looking to get solved, right? So step one is just defining what that list of buyer pains are. So going through, listening to gong calls, talking to reps, talking to customers, really getting a good understanding of what these pains are that our buyers are experiencing. And even more so is, what is the impact to those pains, right? So how can we quantify the pain? It makes it a lot easier for a seller to be able to get a rise or an emotion and an attachment to what you have to offer if they can root their pain in an impact. And usually that impact can be, monetary, it can be personal. It doesn't really matter. It's more so, how are you making sure that what you are going to be communicating as this impact is really going to resonate with your buyer? And that's the most important thing. So defining what those pains are and the impacts of those pains, step one. Step two, defining what their ideal solution looks like, right? So not necessarily leading with your product, but when we think about what the ideal state would be, so not necessarily even a feature, it could be workflow oriented. So an example for this would be, let's say, a buyer pain was I need to write a blog post, but it takes me an hour to do that, right? The ideal state could be something like I want to automatically have a blog post written for me, right? And even further, we wanted to make sure it's high quality in the age of AI and all that type of stuff. But just for the sake of this example, that would be an ideal state, right? So we want to say, here's what the ideal situation would look like for you as a buyer of our solution. And then you also want to align that ideal state with a benefit, right? So this is where benefits do come in handy. If you were able to get this ideal state, what would it mean for you? Is it time savings? Is it ROI? Is it, something that's a little bit more social or emotional? We want to make sure that we're aligning benefits also to the ideal state. Now, the third step in this is aligning that pain and the impact and that solution and that benefit to what you do and how you solve for it. So this is where you start to tie in your product, your services, whatever you're selling, and you want to make sure that you are being pretty clear in how you're solving for that problem. So from a capability standpoint, a feature standpoint, you want to make sure that you can communicate to the buyer that you're going to be solving it. And here's exactly how you're going to do that. And this is something that's going to shine through in demos that your sellers are having with their prospects, and also marketing material that you're putting out into, the ether, whether that's a use case video on LinkedIn or, an ad that's going through exactly how something would be solved for within your product. A product tour is another good example of that. So aligning your product to the actual solution, and specifically that value edge piece or like that differentiation, you want to make sure that you're layering that in here as well. And then the fourth piece here, identifying competitor gaps. So again, this is more so like rounding out this process of identifying the value edge. Where are the areas in which that your competition can't solve for? Whether that's can't solve for as good as you, but more importantly, can't solve for at all, right? Like that's definitely where you want to anchor your value edge on. So pain, impact, solution, benefit, how you solve for it, and how your competitors can't. So I typically do this in a spreadsheet, still a spreadsheet guy, maybe a Google Doc every now and then if I'm feeling crazy. But it allows me to kind of see this stuff side by side so I can start to like align certain things to others and make sure that, there's really no overlap or complexity or anything like that. It's a really crystal clear walkthrough of how we're going to solve for a pain or multiple pains with an ideal state and some capabilities that we have that our competitors don't. Now, just quickly talking through how this might kind of transpire in the wild. A few examples of this. So obviously the Mac PC examples from way back, these were incredible. The pain PC users were dealing with like crashes, bad UI, all that stuff. Apple, which is known for, just really great products, user-friendly, crash-resistant, all that stuff. They were able to use this value edge in a lot of what you were seeing from like an advertising standpoint, similar to Avis, right? Like it might not be super aligned to like the value edge and they were actually like going down that path, but they really leaned into it. So when this ad, I think that, most of us have probably already seen by now, Avis is only number two, or Avis is number two. But that means that we try harder, right? So customer support, knowing how important that is in the rental car business, they were able to lean into that in an ad and a billboard that they were putting out, or, an ad, I believe it was actually in a magazine. So being able to lean into your value edge, yes, in the sales process, very, very important. Also applicable in a lot of other things that you're going to be supporting as a product marketer, or a CI person. So wanted to give you kind of a little bit of what this might look like for us personally, a little bit meta kind of talking about this during this call. But when we think about Klue, so starting with like a buyer pain, for example, takes a lot of time to craft content. And a lot of the time you'll get hit up out of the blue saying, hey, like I have this competitor that showed up in the deal, don't know who they are, never heard of them. Do you have anything for me? And there have been countless times in my career where I have not created the content yet, right? Like didn't build the battle card, don't have the talk tracks, because it's really hard to keep track of your entire competitive landscape, especially now in the world that we live in. And I have to drop whatever I'm doing just to get them what they need, because I want to make sure that I'm helping them work their deals. So the ideal situation in this case is having like a competitor battle card or a profile spun up automatically, like without me having to spend the hours to go and research, drop what I'm doing, like deprioritize some potentially high value work, like maybe we're working on pricing, for example, and get that instantly in the moment, right? So going in and just having access to that so I can give the seller the answer to their question. Now, how that would look like at, starting with like, I guess like the competitor approach in this case, kind of flipping it, is more so, a lot of tools out there give you the intel, like they'll go out there, they'll scatter the web, they'll scatter or they'll scour the web rather, and they'll collect all this different type of information, generate insights from that, but you're kind of left at that, right? So you still have to go and try to like piece the puzzle together across all these different types of insights or intel. And you still have to actually create the content and build, a battle card potentially in this case. And, your solution, how we would tie it back to what we can do is the ability to just automatically spin up a competitor profile with the click of a button, right? So go into Klue, search for that competitor, click generate insights, boom, you have a competitor profile right there that is accessible that you can either, take information from, answer the seller's question, or send it to your seller and they can get their questions answered, whether there or just maybe asking that question in Slack and having Klue respond there. So quick example of what that might look like here at Klue, not our only value or value wedge. Like it's, like we would have much more examples of this as to pains that we're solving for our buyers, but just a little bit of a look into how we might be thinking about that internally. Now, really important piece before we wrap up is to pressure test our value edge. So like anything, if you're going to be doing messaging testing, we want to make sure that we're testing our value edge as well. So getting on calls, getting feedback from people internally that are on the front lines, going out, talking to customers, listening to gong calls, setting up trackers to try to figure out like if things are resonating. That's really important because the second piece of this is that your value edge is always going to be changing. With the pace that software companies have nowadays, it's crazy fast out there. Trying to keep up with it is really hard. And your value edge might be one thing today, something tomorrow. So being able to make sure that you are pressure testing it, but at the same time, always looking for how your value edge is going to change is really important. You want to make sure that your teams always have like the most up-to-date information because deals move really fast and deals can either stall really quickly or you can get them unstuck really quickly if you're able to give your teams the messaging, the talk tracks, differentiation to lean into, all that stuff that's going to really help them work and win their competitive deals. That's it from me. I'm going to wrap up and we're going to be doing a Q&A in a few minutes, I believe. And if you have any questions in the meantime, drop them in the chat. Happy to answer them. But thank you for the time. I really appreciate everybody joining us today.